My first month on OnlyFans, I made 87 grand. Living in a $3.4 million house alone. I was driving a Porsche. It blew my mind.
Your conscience at the time is not like bothered at all?
I'd say it really started getting bothered when my family found out. My dad encouraged me to stay on OnlyFans.
Time out.
Ex-pastor.
Hold on.
Yup.
Wait a minute. Rewind the tape. What?
Ex-sex worker finds Jesus Christ. Let's get into it.
Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
It's such an honor to meet you.
No, man, the honor's
Really
mine,
is.
man. As I was telling you earlier, like I've heard bits and pieces of like your journey.
Yep.
Sorry, before I go ahead, I just want to caveat that the original interview is just over an hour long. This version has been edited into about 20-minute segment. I do urge you to watch the full interview. The link will be in the description below. It's an amazing interview with Lecrae and this young lady called Nala Ray, who was an ex-OnlyFans sex worker and has now found Christ. Love these ones. Let's get back into it.
And, the big statement that everybody sees is like the OnlyFans statement, but
Right.
but nobody just becomes an OnlyFans content creator. So there's a story
No.
behind that.
Absolutely.
And I would love to just kind of understand, some of the story behind that. So what I understand is like around 11, your parents divorced. There was a tornado involved. Like what happened here?
Well, the story like really starts building as like a younger kid and like more when I'm conscious, and I'm really very well aware of like what's going on in my life. And a tornado hit our home when we were in Billings, Missouri and completely took everything from us. And that's tragic for a kid so what happened was the tornado knocked over this ginormous like 100-year-old tree into our room. Like I shared a room with my sisters. It was gone. So like if we wouldn't have gotten up, we would have been literally dead.
Wow.
So really crazy, but we lost everything. Our clothes, our toys, everything was gone, sucked out of the house. And so we kind of like just had to start over from there. We lived in a hotel for like 12 weeks. It was really long, having 5 children. You're living in a hotel room, all different ages. And I think my parents did the absolute best they could in that horrifying situation. As an adult, you process things different than a kid. So you're dealing with, oh my gosh, we have children, we have bills to pay. Where are we going to live next? And the kids are like, oh, we could just stay at a hotel for 12 weeks. You know what I'm saying? But we lost everything. It's just really hard to wrap your mind around that. But then, we got back on our feet. We're living in a home again. My parents divorced very shortly after that. So there was some infidelity there and that hurt, So like, you just saying goodbye to your dad because he left, really, really sucks. And then like really not understanding why he left because your parents are going to tell you the reason why, especially at a young age. They're just going to say, hey, we're getting a divorce. You don't even know what divorce is. You're like, but you guys said you're going to stay together forever, And then that's just not the case. And so it's so hard as a kid, I realized, to see your parents as like actual people. And I've heard that so many times, but when you reflect on that, you're like, wow, like when you're an adult, you just deal with things differently. And when you're a kid, you just expect to be like provided for and like everything's just gonna be okay, But then my dad was gone for a couple years and then they remarried. So he comes back into the family.
Okay, wait a minute. Time out. Time out. It's a lot of trauma that you just experienced.
Oh, yeah.
A tornado at 11 is traumatizing.
Yeah.
A divorce is traumatizing.
Yeah.
You're feeling the weight of that, like you're talking about, and then they get back together.
Now, I love that Lecrae picked this up very quickly. He's picked up a lot of trauma that she's described. And I find that, I don't have any experience of this personally, but all the stories I've come across from people who have been in similar sort of circumstances, who find themselves in the sex entertainment industry, whether that be OnlyFans or, adult movie stars, whatever it might be. There's always a common theme, and I find that there's past trauma during the childhood, whether that be a divorce, like she experienced, some sort of, essay, whatever it might be. There's always been some form of trauma in the past, and I think she's going to go into quite a bit more detail about this as well.
2.5 years later, they remarry.
What was that were you seeing evidence of that, or did it feel like, wait, maybe they're gonna get back together, or what?
So my dad wasn't living, he was living in Mexico. So he completely just like left. It wasn't like a couple states away or maybe a couple minutes away. It was like, dude, you're gone. We can't see you unless we get on a plane to see you.
Yeah.
So we went actually one time to go see him in Mexico, and he was just like, didn't even feel like my dad. It was weird, like very different person.
Wow.
And then shortly after that, my parents continued their communications. It was very rough, lots of arguing, lots of fights. My dad decided to move back from Mexico and get like a townhome kind of near where we are to start sharing custody with us. And then I guess they fell back in love. I don't know. As a kid, like you just want your parents to be together no matter what. And the feeling of that was like, yes, thankfully, like, because it was just so all like uncertain, all the arguing and like it just like wears on you as a kid and you're just so unsure.
Yeah.
And both of your parents are just really hurt. So that's.
And I've got to say this, guys. If you have children and you're in a marriage, a relationship, by God's grace, it's a marriage, especially if you're living together with kids. But I understand that, people's journeys are quite different. Arguing in front of children is one of the worst things you can do. I mean, I've had experience of it. I just want to make you aware. I'm sure you know this as parents, but just as a reminder, it's probably one of the worst things you can do to argue in front of your children, because your children are terrified. They may not even say, Mommy, Daddy, I'm scared, but they're terrified to see Mommy and Daddy arguing. In their mind, there's world war breaking out in the house. Nobody's raised a finger, but voices have been raised and demeanors have changed towards one another.
That's really hard to go through. But I was also homeschooled. So I wasn't going to school, nothing. I was being homeschooled by my mom, who was also going through her own stuff, like depression. And it's so hard to see your mom go through that, or any parent go through that. And you just don't even know what's going on. And then all of a sudden your dad's back in your life and things are looking good. And you're like, okay, I'll take it.
So you're probably what, around 14 around the time they get back
14,
together?
yeah.
So from like 11 to 14, you're like, what are you feeling? Are you feeling like, man, are you feeling the weight of it? Is it like, do you feel rebellious, or do you feel like I don't care, or you just don't know?
I just don't know. And it's really hard because when you go through trauma, you really push that back. And as a kid, you don't even know you're going through trauma. But as an adult, you're like, man, I don't even remember how I was really feeling because it was just so much hurt all the time. So I wish I could reflect back on like how I was really feeling, but I can't. I think I've just pushed that so far out.
Pushed it back.
Right. Like, I just remember I just being confused, like that's pretty much it.
Well, hey, I love Jesus, but I love therapy too. So, hopefully some therapy down the line will help you.
I'm actually in therapy right now.
Come on.
So dealing with other issues too, just like reconnecting with my family.
Yeah.
That's a really big part of like my journey back as like the prodigal daughter, I'd say.
Yeah.
Like I didn't, like the reaction I got from my parents wasn't as what like I expected, because you read it in the Bible and you're like, this big feast and he comes back and he's adored by his parents, but that did not happen.
Ooh, we're gonna go there.
Woo, let's go there.
But before we do, I'm curious, like your family gets back together and then your dad, does the whole family become a part of the church, or just your dad? Like,
whole
so how did that happen? What happens?
Oddly enough, like my parents moved us to Florida from Illinois.
Okay.
And that like my dad was a pastor in Illinois. So before that,
he was always a pastor.
not always.
Okay.
Because like after they remarried, that's when they started becoming like Christians. So it was like, okay, we started visiting a church there, and I was going to a Christian school, like a really tiny private Christian school. And slowly but surely, like this ball kept rolling where my dad wanted to be a pastor. And I was like, okay, sounds good. Like
Wow.
I don't know. That to me just sounds a little bit crazy. My take on leadership in the church is slightly different. I do not believe, and I'm sure this is going to be controversial and some people are going to disagree, but I don't believe that you should just want to be a pastor. I think you're called to be a pastor. I don't think somebody can wake up one day and say, do you know what? I feel like being a pastor. I'm going to do the training. I'm going to go to Bible school and I'm going to become a pastor and get a church. I really think you ought to be called to that office. And I think herein lies a little bit of a problem in what she's explaining.
right? So we're in Illinois. We're like, my dad's a pastor. All of a sudden, we are preachers' kids. And there was like 3 consecutive church splits. Yeah, with my dad being the head pastor.
Wow.
And you know what's crazy? I never thought about it like looking at my dad like it was his fault. Because you're like his kid. You know, you're like, my dad didn't do that.
Yeah.
But now if I get into some crazy stuff for you right now, my dad is actually facing a prison sentence right now.
Ooh. What did he do?
So, like, it's crazy because now that he is facing that, I look back on everything. Like, my mind just won't stop going over all these details. Like, what's going on? Like, was it really him, or was it the people of the church, or was it just different beliefs? You know, it's so hard to like see that because it's your dad, you know?
Yeah.
But he was also supposed to be like the spiritual leader,
Right.
you know? So I'm like, when did you fall out of love with Jesus, or when did you stop fearing God? It's not always about like not loving God. It's sometimes just about not fearing him, you know? Because when you fear God, you're stepping away from evil.
But a lot of people just, they look at folks and they say, well, why would they make this decision, or why would they do that? And instead of saying like, why do people do what they do? Sometimes you have to say what happened to them.
Ooh,
You know what I mean?
That's true.
And that's how I'm
That's
listening
true.
at your story now, and I'm like, well, you know, I can see people saying, oh, she was on OnlyFans and does such and such.
There's such a backstory.
Yeah.
You know, someone doesn't just get on OnlyFans, become a millionaire, and then they're just like, whoop-de-doo, like, I just wanted to try it out.
Right.
No. And I
Right.
think that's a big misconception right now with people, that they like, there's no way she became a Christian. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, you don't know how broken I was.
Man.
Let me build the clock for you so I can tell you the time. I was a bad teenager, like a bad one. Like, out of 5 kids, I was the worst.
Talk about that.
You know,
What's happening as what does a bad teenager look
So
like?
rebellious, so stubborn, like very like thick-headed. Thought I knew what I wanted. You know, I want to do this.
And I think that's typical. What she's saying here, you know, when kids get to the teenage years, don't get me wrong, there's an element of kids testing the waters, kids pushing the barrier. You know, there's that saying, you know, give them a yard and they'll take a mile, or, you know. I think there's an element of young teenagers to sort of push back against parents. And I'm not saying it's the right thing to do. I mean, I did it as a teen. I can't think of many of my friends who didn't do it. I think probably everyone at some stage has, to some degree, rebelled against their parents. Not to the extent where you become a sex worker or a criminal, but have rebelled to some extent. But I just think it's an interesting take when she says, you know, she was the worst of all of her siblings, and, you know, very rebellious, very stubborn. And that, to me, is the early warning signs about that something's about to happen for her parents.
And this, I'm going to do this, this, and this, and I don't care what you think. You know what I'm saying? But like, for me, it really started with me liking boys. And I was like, hey, like, somebody likes me. I'm not like just this ugly duckling, you know, in my family.
You're isolated. You're homeschooled, so you don't
isolated.
know.
And you just go to church and you're homeschooled. Like, that's about it. And I got a job when I was like 15 because I just wanted to get out of the house so bad. And then I found like I was just like flirting all the time, and I loved the attention. And you know what I realized? Like, once I went through like my love languages, I was like, oh, I love physical touch. Like, and I don't get that at home.
No one's
like,
saying, you're my sweetheart, I love you.
all I see is like my mom being depressed, and my dad is like not there mentally, you know? So I'm just like, and then I know my other brothers and sisters went through their own things. But once I kind of really started figuring out, like,
You got to love your kids, guys. You got to love your kids. And this is typical in, I'm Nigerian, but this is very typical in Nigerian households, or I think African also. I'm not sure if it's the black community. I can't speak for everyone, but it's very rare that you hear from your parents, I love you. It's very rare that your parents really show their adoration and love towards you. It's easy to say I love you. Some parents may say it. Some may be listening and say, no, I heard my parents say I love you all the time. But was it just words? Did they show it? You know, spending time trying to get to know you. A lot of my childhood that I remember was just a load of correction, a load of come to church, you know, wear that attire, a lot of correcting. Which isn't a problem. Correction and discipline are great things. But are you showing love to your children as parents? Because from what this lady, Nala Ray, is saying, Actually, I shouldn't even call her that. I don't know if that's her entertainment name or what her real name is, but that's the only name I know her as by. So I'm going to just refer to her as Nala Ray. That's what she was saying, you know. She didn't really get that love in the household. She didn't feel noticed. So she, you know, when somebody gave her attention outside of the home, she was like, wow, what is this? I want more of this. I'm going to do everything I can to get more of this. And that was where things went wrong.
What I loved and what made me feel loved, I could see like where I wasn't getting that.
Yep.
And that's where therapy comes in.
Yeah.
But it's really nice to like reflect and kind of build like the puzzle piece back. And you're like, oh, okay. Like I really understand that better now. So
You create in a lot of ways a false sense of love or security.
that's it.
And I know this because I experienced it, you know, coming from a traumatized background, not feeling affirmed in certain ways, you start looking for substitutes to like make you feel whole. And I did the exact same thing.
Yeah.
So you're a teenager, you're chasing boys and enjoying the attention that boys are giving you. How are mom and dad, do they know about this? Are they finding out? Or
They didn't find out for a while. I'm going to share something really deep that I've never talked about, but I do feel comfortable now after I've like kind of gone through therapy, and I'm reading this amazing book called Soul Care. Really amazing book. So, but it really explained a lot to me. So my introduction into sex was when I was 13. I was molested by this person who my parents let into our home because he was like a 16-year-old kid.
I just wanted to hear that sentence. Sorry, I paused it mid-sentence. But it was what I was saying. You know, the past trauma. She said her experience of sex was when she was 13. Crazy, crazy young. But believe it or not, it's getting younger. It's getting younger now in our time. But her experience of sex was 13. And she says she was molested when her parents allowed a boy into the home. Let me just listen to that again.
And my parents wanted to like basically adopt him because he had a really horrible home life. Like I'm talking heavy drugs. And so they felt really sorry for him, but didn't really know him. And I was taken advantage of by him. And 13 years old, like I had no idea what any of that was. Like I didn't know what I was feeling. I was just like, okay, like, and I didn't tell my parents until I was like 16, but they didn't even need to be told. They knew something was wrong. Like I was sneaking out of the window at like 2 a.m, coming back at 4 or 5 a.m., you know, and just acting so wild, like crazy. Like I started working like a 40 hour a week job at like 16. And I know you're not supposed to do that, but like my boss let me because I was a great worker because I just needed purpose. Like I needed something to hang on to because I didn't want to go back home. I was like, let me work, let me make some money, let me buy a car for myself, you know, like I need freedom. I felt like a caged bird, you know, and I just like stuck in this cycle of homeschooling and church going. And I didn't like my church. And like, I was just like, dang, I'm so stuck. Like it grips you. And it's like horrible as a teenager to feel like that. I didn't have any friends. Like, I don't know, like my siblings were my friends, and that's like not cool.
They had their own trauma.
They really do. Like they really do. And we took it out on each other for sure. But
yeah, first of all, let me say, I'm sorry that happened to you.
it's okay.
And no, I say that because I was also molested by a older teenage girl when I was a little boy. And I shove it in the back of my brain because as a kid, you don't know how to process it, but you get older and you realize how it has negatively affected you in so many ways. And I just want to say, like, the reason why I say I'm sorry that happened to you is because I want you to like feel the same weight lifted off that I felt in knowing like, oh, some of the decisions I made that were not healthy decisions are not just a product of me just being
Oh, I fully realized that.
You know,
just being a crazy hormonal teenager.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's what I thought. Like, I was like, dang, I'm just whack, man. Like, what is wrong with me?
Yeah.
My parents made me feel like that, like, until I told them. And then they just threw me into therapy with like an 80-year-old woman. And I was like, this helps, you know? God. So, and like, I kind of told her a little bit, but then she just said that like my introduction to sex was so dark and perverted that it's like, twisting the way I see sex.
Yes.
Wow. That's crazy. her introduction to sex was so perverted that her outlook on sex in general has been corrupted, has been twisted. Her outlook on sex was something, she said I craved it because it was attention. People were giving her what she wanted, which was that fake love and affection and attention and physical touch. She spoke about love language, physical touch. And so her way of feeling loved was sex, which is crazy. And I think that affects so many people who experience sex at a young age, and through the wrong means, the incorrect means. I mean, God designed sex for marriage, all right? That's the only way us as mankind were supposed to experience it. And don't get me wrong, I'm not, I'm no angel. I didn't experience it within marriage. I have a past that is sinful and is absolutely abhorrent. But it just goes to show.
And it's not proper. It's
Yes.
not pure.
Yep.
It is not the way you're supposed to go about it. But
Yeah.
I was like having, sex at I started having sex at 15.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like, I needed that attention.
Yeah.
Like I craved it. I didn't even know what I craved, but I knew I needed some love,
Yeah.
from somebody.
And it's taken out of the context of like it being spiritual and meaningful because someone already took it from you.
Yeah, it's
And
gone.
So it's like, it's not this. And so then you grow up like, that's not a big deal. It's just whatever.
Oh,
or
yeah.
it's a tool to get something else or whatever.
That's what
so
the world teaches for
Exactly.
sure. Especially if you talk to women nowadays, they're like, use that. I'm like, for what?
Right.
Like, you want a Gucci bag?
I appreciate you setting the stage.
Yeah.
And I think that's helpful, especially for folks who are just like, there's sticker shock, like the OnlyFans.
I agree.
Like, whoa,
I
whoa.
agree.
But it's funny because I was watching some of your testimony with my daughter, who's 15. And
Awesome. You look too young to have a
hey,
daughter
come
that's
on.
15 years
Come on,
old.
talk
You
nice
said,
to me.
Black don't crack.
That's right. Unless you smoke it, don't smoke it.
Oh, dang.
But what was cool, what she asked me was, she was like, how do people know her? And I was like, what do you mean? And she was like, why was she so popular before she became a Christian? And I said, OnlyFans. And she said, how do people know about OnlyFans? And I love that, like, innocence.
Oh, it's so sweet.
That she
like,
had.
hang on to that.
Yeah, but it was interesting to me because I thought about it though, and I said, well, that's interesting because I wouldn't have known who you were because I don't.
You're not on that side of the internet.
Right.
It's a completely different side.
Whole nother world,
Oh,
whole
yeah.
nother planet. So I'm curious, like, what's the pinky toe before you get to OnlyFans? Like, how does it like, or is it just like, oh, I'm gonna do that immediately? Like, were there some steps? Was it like,
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
gonna put some pictures up online that are little like
Bikini photos on
Okay.
Instagram.
Okay.
And I was like a fitness chick, and I'm like, oh.
Shots fired. So what I'm getting from that is, so there are levels to this, and that there are levels to entry into the adult industry. And she just said her levels, her steps, her stepping stones were bikini pictures on Instagram. I think that's crazy because we live in an era where you cannot scroll through social media without seeing women dressed scantily. I think it's crazy.
I'm just doing this for fitness, like I look good. I go to the gym, like
Okay.
With the false pretense that they're posting these pictures for fitness. Is what she's saying. She's taking bikini pics and, she's all of a sudden getting into fitness so that she has a reason to post semi-naked pictures and use the excuse of, it's fitness. I look good, I'm in the gym and I'm just posting this away.
tiny steps. And then like I had a boyfriend I was like sending nudes to, and I was like, oh, I'm comfortable with this. Like another doorway opened. And then I was like, I got so comfortable in that. Some random guy like messages me on Instagram and is like, this is right when only like COVID just hit, right? Like, or just about hit. And he's like, you would kill it on OnlyFans. I'm like, what is OnlyFans, bro? And at the time, I was working for an orthopedics company. Like, I'm doing like a real big girl job, not making like any money, you know, feeling okay about it, you know, but I'm trying to make more money. I'm trying to like escalate, but I've been in that job for like 2.5 years, not going nowhere.
Yeah.
Like, they keep you where you're at. And he was like, you'd do great on OnlyFans. I was like, what's OnlyFans? And he's like, well, it's a site you can like be exclusive on with your fans. I'm like, I have no fans, bro.
So give me an idea of like the type of money initially, like that's making you say, what the heck is going on? Like, is it like, oh, you're making a, you know, a salary at the orthopedic job, and then all of a sudden you double?
So I was making like $3,500 a month at the orthopedic job, right?
Okay.
A month. My first month on OnlyFans, I made 87 grand.
Oh my.
I was like, quit.
Are you serious?
Wow. If that's the sort of money you can make from OnlyFans and that sort of industry, then no wonder people are flocking to it. We're so we're so quick to get quick money, no matter what the cost. We're so blinded that we don't see where our future is headed. You know, we want the quick money, whether that be women who go into the adult industry or men who go into drugs or any, you know, other sorts of criminality to get that quick money. But then you don't think about the future, you know, the future where your kids are going to see those pictures, and whether we like it or not, they're going to be picked on in school. Okay, we're living in an era where pornography it's a disease, it's a virus. I would say, I'm going to a silly number affecting, I'd say about 70% of people. I think pornography is affecting. And so when we look at the generations that come up, if those numbers are to stay true and even increase, it's likely that, you know, you've got a past of sexual work, you have kids, it's likely that your kids' friends may come across some of your content. And I just think that's nuts. You know, we need to think about what we're doing, the effect it has on our future.
Yes.
It blew my mind.
We're not promoting this, people.
Not at all.
There's trauma that comes with this. Okay.
Way more than you can handle. So I'm like, cool.
How long were you on OnlyFans?
5 years.
Good God. And how much money do you think you made in total?
14 million. Okay, I didn't I grossed that. I didn't net that kind of
Still,
thing. Like, I know.
You generated $14 million. For the person who's watching this or listening to your story and they're like,
dang, I could make that money. Oh man, it comes with the price of your soul.
come on, break it down. Where does it? You're in LA, you're bald. Wait, before you even get to how it breaks down, because people never hear
truth.
the emptiness of it all.
Oh.
I love that she said that. Before you even think about it, it's going to cost you your soul. She's speaking about that first-handedly from experience.
Man.
So let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it. I'm excited.
First talk about the highlight reel. First talk about like
living it up.
Right.
Oh yeah. So I'm living in a $3.4 million house alone. So my rent was like $16K a month. I was driving a Porsche, had it. Super crazy designer bags. Like, I went to other places in the world to go buy my designer bags. So like one of a kind or one of this, and I had my closet. Every room in my 6-bedroom home was stuffed full of clothes. Oh my.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. She grossed $14 million in the 5 or 6 years she was on OnlyFans. In her first month, she made $87,000 in 1 month, 4 weeks. Living in I think she said a £3.6 million home, mansion, 6 bedrooms, all her rooms filled with luxury clothing and bags. I see why it appeals to young women and men. I see it. I get why it appeals. But I would urge you to watch the rest of this video, because she goes on to, do you know what? Let me get that up. I can't end it there, because her story of coming to faith is a very interesting one. So let me just get that up as well. Got chapters. Can't get enough of God. Yeah.
But
Who is Jesus to you before all of that, and who is he at that moment?
like a genie in a bottle.
Okay.
Like when I was like more so like a young teenager, I'd be like, oh God, get me out of this situation right now. My parents are mad at me. Like, I don't know what to do, you know, but that was it. I never had a relationship with Christ ever.
Yeah.
You know, it was only praying to God when I needed to get out of a situation. Like I was cheating in school. I needed to get out of that like situation because they're calling my parents and I got to go to detention. Like, God, get me out of this. Like, make this not happen.
Right.
Kind of thing. Just like a genie. Like, don't know at all who he is really.
And then now Jesus is...
Man, like even saying he's my everything is not enough. Like that's how I feel. Like my soul needs him. Like I've never been a reader until I became a Christian.
Yep.
Like
Same.
I can't get enough. Like the
Same.
Bible's not enough for me.
Yep.
Like I read my Bible and I'm like, okay, so what's next? So I pick up a book from John Bevere, The Awe of God. The Holy Spirit by John Bevere. Driven by Eternity.
Yeah.
I love Soul Care. The Power of a Praying Wife. Like I started
just
reading.
consuming Christian content.
I can't
Well, what
help
you're
it.
doing is funny because I went through the same thing. I didn't grow up in
Really?
a Christian household, but I had a radical transformation. And what we're doing is we're literally trying to change our mental maps because we like have thought one way for so long.
So long.
And you're like, I got to change the way I think about everything. What is this? What is that? And I'm curious. So how fast did you get married?
So fast. So we met in late September. We started dating in January. We were married in March.
January, February, March. So September, October, November, December, January.
Wow. That's quick. And do you know what? I love these stories, man. I do. I think they are inspiring. I think she can be a loud voice in this area, you know, where you look at somebody who works in the sex work and typically you'd think, yeah, you're never going to find a man. And if you do find one, it's going to be somebody who also does sex work or somebody that you know, you're not really going to love. But she found a man of God. She found a Christian, you know, and she's married. She came to faith and she's talking about her insatiable thirst for God and how she can't get enough. The Bible's not enough. She needs more. You know, I love hearing things like that. And I think that's the right place to end it, really, because that is so inspiring. You know, I urge you to watch the full interview where, you know, she goes into a lot more detail about her journey and her past and, you know, her love for Jesus and what she's doing now and, you know, where all the money is and if she still has it. So I urge you to go and watch it. But be encouraged, you know, be encouraged by this story. Yeah. I hope you enjoyed this one. That's it from me, guys. Peace.